The equipment has been delivered. We're looking at preserving the past of Indigenous communities by taking audio recordings of oral history, doing video recordings of ceremonies, artifacts, dances, traditional life before those cultures are lost. The iPhones that we've supplied also provide the capability of using 3D LiDAR recording of artifacts and artworks. And the iPhone LiDAR scanner has been used quite successfully to take imprints of cave paintings, of mosaics, rock carvings, and other physical artifacts. So if I get time, I'll be doing a quick demonstration showing you the Polycam application, which once again is freely downloadable, but has a subscription model for exporting the meshes into a number of other applications. So the project was based around Apple devices, mainly because that was what I'm most familiar with using. For the Asia Connect participants, if you could contact me about your Filmic Pro licenses. The Polycam LiDAR 3D capture software is freely downloadable from the App Store. And as I mentioned, DaVinci Resolve is a free alternative to Final Cut Pro and supports Mac, Windows, and Linux. So let's start on the basics. We think it's best to shoot content in landscape mode, although the current generation of users, particularly those on TikTok and YouTube shorts, like to shoot in portrait mode. However, landscape is the default for professional video and television production. One of the other goals of the project was to build up a library of content which the NRENs could potentially sell. So doing portrait mode for TikTok or YouTube shorts looks very amateur in that context. You either have black bars down the side or the reflection of the video there. So we really are trying to encourage people to actually use landscape mode. Now, in video production, there are a number of terminologies that I'd like to introduce you to. And I'll be using those throughout this presentation. The A roll is typically your primary subject matter. The B roll, though, is actually more important, well, as important. It's used to capture background video. We're suggesting people capture absolutely everything you can. You never know when it's going to be important or perhaps useful to sell a short segment of something that you've captured around the environment that you're doing your main project in. It's also really useful to cut away from an interview to some background imagery or to intermix it with your final product. So we encourage people to capture everything as much as they can, even if it would seem superfluous at the time. And as I mentioned, it allows you to intermix with your A-roll or primary footage. One of the key things that we need to look at is, and particularly for the resale of video, is to gain permission from those we're filming. This is particularly important for Indigenous communities. We want to make sure that people are giving us informed consent and allowing us to actually take their images. In my country, Australia, our Indigenous people some of them have strict taboos about the images of or voices of deceased people being shown. So it is vitally important that you obtain release forms. I'll just switch to a typical release form. So there are a number of websites which I'll include on the presentation links, which are how to actually make a video content and release form. This is also vitally if you wish to sell your content into Europe, which has a thing called GDPR, which maintains absolute strict privacy and provides people the right to withdraw their images or their participation at any time in the future. So it's quite key that you obtain release and maintain those release forms in a secure place. So as I mentioned, there's a link to the site I just showed you, which seems to be a fairly comprehensive video. One of the other things that we've been involved with and you might wish to look at is actually streaming to multiple platforms simultaneously. In the case of APAN, we're actually using a platform called Hoover. So we're feeding the video from the production desk into Hoover, and then from Hoover into YouTube to both archive and make the videos more widely available. Another option that we have is a free application or website called restream.io. Okay. Which allows you to stream up to 30 destinations at once. So if you have national specific content streaming platforms, Stream is a really good way of doing it. The project will also, in its first 2 years, use the Vimeo platform, which provides a both collaborative editing capability and a restreaming capability. So you fed the video into Vimeo, and it was then able to pass the video over to Hoover, which is the event application, which in turn passed the video over to YouTube. So some complexity of these things can sometimes be overwhelming. So I'd suggest trying to draw diagrams of how you want the video flow to look, and particularly wiring diagrams for how to rig things up well before you try to do a live event. As you've seen, we're kind of struggling here to, the last session ran a bit late, so this was only 20 minutes we had to So streaming on YouTube, due to a number of terrorist attacks, which have been streamed live on Facebook and YouTube, there is a 24-hour window that you must wait before you're able to stream once you're requested on YouTube. Once you're a regular YouTube contributor, that 24-hour delay window stops. However, I'd suggest establishing a YouTube channel well in advance of running any event. The YouTube has the capability to go live. I don't know if you can see the small camera icon in the top right-hand window, but that allows you to your YouTube channel your YouTube viewing and make it live immediately. As I mentioned, YouTube requires 24 hours and the clock starts counting down. Unfortunately, I didn't hit that 24-hour window or I would have be streaming this directly to YouTube, but we are achieving that through our Hoover platform. By the way, please feel free to ask questions at any time during this if I'm going too fast or if you just want to quiz me on anything. So something to consider is the value of your content. There are significant revenue opportunities for students, universities, national research works to sell small parts of video, particularly if it's produced in high quality. As I mentioned, the Vimeo platform supports the sale of short segment videos or long segment videos. There is also another platform that we've been using called Wirestock, which is a transactional platform like Shutterstock, which allows you to both buy and sell stock videos. So there may be something you wish to use in a production or a video that you're making. Both of those sites are good places to go to. So some of the key areas of video production is to actually shoot as professionally as possible. As video is really required. We've all seen very shaky video taken off people's iPhones when they're walking around. So I'd suggest the use of a gimbal if you are going to be doing moving video. This also provides a level of stabilization and makes your video product look a lot more professional. If you are using a gimbal, though, you do need to disable the iPhone-based stabilization, or you get a really weird kind of slow motion blurry effect on your videos. So please select one method of stabilization. The newer iPhone model, the iPhone 13, also has a specialized mode for video stabilization, which allows you to do things as extreme as running alongside a foot race, and it will stabilize the video in real time. If you haven't stabilized, though, the worst case, you can achieve some stability in your video editing application. However, that can sometimes be not particularly effective depending on how unstable the video was in the first place. One of the important things in terms of doing a video product is to write a shooting script. This gives you a general outline of the footage you need to capture. Our goal with this is to tell a story, to show a part of history, or to explain a culture or an artifact or a scene that you're actually trying to capture. It's also really important to prepare your interview questions. If you're going to be doing a one-on-one or a multi-person interview. Once you've gained experience in this, it's a lot easier to make those questions up on the fly. But we all have master interviewers on our television networks who have many, many years of experience and make it look so easy. It is really quite an art to conduct an interview and to make the person you're interviewing comfortable and respond to your questions. So, as I mentioned before, there's A-roll and B-roll. A-roll is the primary subject matter. So your shooting script should have a detailed list of the footage you need to capture. If it's an oral history or the background imagery of someone telling a story, make sure that you have a detailed list of the things that you absolutely need to capture. And on the B-roll, it's your general background video. And once again, I'd suggest you capture 10 times more than you think you will probably need. Storage is cheap. It never hurts to have a lot more of that background video. And as I mentioned earlier, that can have quite significant resale value. So you might be the only person in the world who has been to a location, and the BBC might want to use it for a documentary and are prepared to pay really good money for having good quality video that someone has taken. There are a number of video formats. SDR, which is Standard Dynamic Range, is the video format that we've been using for the last 50 years or so since colour television came in. It uses what's called an 8-bit colour space. This has been kind of superseded with newer 4K and 8K televisions with a standard called High Dynamic Range, or HDR. HDR provides an extended colour space, so it's able to capture a much wider depth of colour. It looks best on newer 4K televisions, and in particular OLED televisions. As I mentioned, it provides a richer colour space. It is about 10,000 times the number of variations in colour as SDR video. However, HDR by itself can cause problems for older televisions and monitors, and depending on your national broadcast system, may or may not be supported. However, the good news is HDR can be converted in the video editor and exported in an SDR form if that is required. My suggestion would be to actually, as you start, to export into SDR format for upload into YouTube, which gives you access to the widest range of viewers. One of the issues that we've seen is that sometimes HDR video looks really badly washed out on an SDR screen. So best to always go with the lowest common denominator, but try to shoot with the highest possible quality that you possibly can. So I would suggest always shooting in 4K. That gives you a number of options, particularly in editing, of being able to, if your positioning of the video frame was not quite correct, you can actually sample a traditional 1080p source out of that and then re-expand that up to 4K for your final product. So some of the practical aspects of shooting video is to set up the tripods, use gimbals for handheld use. One of the key things is framing the subjects, and I'll play you a short video which describes the rule of thirds and gives me a chance to short film. This movement by filmmaking, photography, YouTube videos, and one massively improved composition. So, what's into the rule of thirds? Well, in a nutshell, it is the composition. I'll preempt a later slide, and that actually getting reflected audio from the source. So what you were just hearing there was the Zoom feed coming back. Okay, that should be better now. One of the issues in terms of video production, and particularly some of the live streaming that we've been doing over the years, is the last 3 years of APAN meetings, is dealing with audio echo. So let me restart that clip for you, hopefully so you're not hearing it multiple.
Tell you everything you need to know about the rule of verbs. This rule applies to filmmaking, photography, YouTube videos, and once understood, massively improve the composition of your shots. It's coming up. Video production. So, what is the rule of verbs? Well, in a nutshell, it is the composition of your shot, or the framing of your shot, and where within the frame your point of interest sits. The best and most simple way to understand the rule of verbs is with a grid like this. Now, you may have seen a grid like this with a camera before and switched it off because you thought it was distracting, but if you're new to composition and you're just starting out, I recommend keeping this grid switched on. The grid is made up of 2 vertical lines and 2 horizontal lines, all spaced evenly apart. Now, when we place our subjects on these lines, particularly where they meet, a much more aesthetically pleasing shot is created, and our eyes are drawn to these focal points. It also helps balance a shot and gives it more content. So let's demonstrate all of this, like gather together and take a look at that there, and we'll see how the rule first applied. So this first shot is not simply one, and it's on it's a sit-down interview for a promotional film. So as you can see, we're going to apply the grid. See, I place the subject in this case.
Just a moment, I'll listen up to slide stuff.
The cross-section of the vertical and horizontal lines, because this is our focal point. This was a 2-shot, close-up and a wide shot. No matter which shot we come to, you'll see the rule of verbs being applied. Now let's step things up a notch and head outside. So let's say we want to shoot some video and take a photograph of this lighthouse. We could just place the lighthouse here, but it doesn't look particularly great. But if we move the camera and reposition the lighthouse here using the rule of thirds, you can see that our framing looks much better and we have a much more pleasing shot. If your shot has 2 subjects, you can place them so that they appear on both of the vertical lines. So these have all been static shots. What happens when you want to add some movement? It's some footage of a promotional film that I recently shot, and as you can see, when I add the grid, you'll notice that placing the subjects using the rule of thirds. So the next time you're watching a film or a TV show, pay close attention to where the subjects are being placed within the frame, because you'll be surprised by just how optimal rule of thirds is applied. Hollywood is using this technique, TV shows are using this technique, and so should you. What happens if you're being taken a photograph and you're shot with footage and you haven't applied rule of thirds? Don't worry, because it's a little too late. Just import the footage into your editing software. In this case, now all editing software related to this. We can then adjust the composition using the rule of thirds, and voila. So the next time you're ready to take a photograph or shoot some video, take a moment just to think about the framing, your composition, your subject, and the rule of thirds. Now, this is a rule that was that's been broken, but only break a rule if you understand. Think of it more as a handy rule of thumb rather than set in stone. An exception to this rule, for example, you could be wanting to capture a symmetrical shot like this one here. I could have placed myself to the left or to the right, but the shot just feels a little unbalanced. And this, of course, is all subjective. Art is subjective, films are subjective, what's good and bad is subjective. So you just start to get use the rule of thirds, get to grips with it, experiment with it, and then think about breaking it. So I hope this video has helped. If it did, give it the old thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe by clicking over here. Any questions, leave them in the comment section below. But that's it from me. I will see you in the next video.
I'd really recommend a lot of the content on this YouTube channel, which is Learn Online Video. This guy provides some absolutely great hints and techniques, and goes into far more detail than I have time to actually do today. So there's a lot of resources available. I'll also place a link to this channel in my presentation. So, as I said, some of the practical aspects of video shooting. Frame the subjects, consider the rule of thirds. So, some of the images we're seeing here is a previous iteration of the Asia Connect project, which was filmed at the University of Malaya's Historic Museum, where they have a number of traditional Malay houses called kampong. And we're also really honoured to be joined by a group of Marmari people who took us through various aspects of their weaving techniques, and were kind enough to actually explain the process as they went along. So basically trying to record their history, trying to record the way that the old people are doing things. In some of these some of these photos, you may see Shahaimi, who's just walked in the door. We basically took a team of students from around the region, did a 2-day intense training course, and then took them out to the museum for a day of filming. Each team did a different house or to also participate in the filming of the Marmari lady who was doing the ladies who were doing the weaving. In this, you can actually see the weaving itself. We're able to capture using a multi-camera technique, both a wide shot, but also a really detailed view of the hand actions. Once again, it's really important to capture as much nuance as you can. With multiple cameras, you have the capability to have a close shot, also a long shot. You can see the production of a number of different baskets and a number of different Marmari people who were kind enough to spend the day with us, repeating the stuff that they were doing, which allowed the various teams to actually gain experience and to use a lot of the equipment that Shahaimi's group was kind enough to provide. This was the precursor and kind of the idea that we got the project from. So as I mentioned, there are also a number of traditional houses. There were 3 different teams. Each of them were given a house to film each. After we'd kind of done a walkthrough of all of the houses, everyone kind of made their shooting scripts, kind of worked out what the various aspects, like things like the furniture or the layout or the architect, what was important that they actually wanted to capture and preserve. So I'd like to show you some of the final student videos. This one was actually a precursor, which was called Conservation Division. It was produced at a steam and railway conservation yard, but taken by one of the teams that had participated in the contest. So as you saw in that video, there was a significant use of the rule of thirds. By panning around, by trying to frame the subjects, it introduced a level of professional quality video. As you also saw, there were subtitles or titles in the native language of the intended audience. By doing that, you're able to target your video at multiple cultures or multiple languages. And it's just a matter of adding a different set of language titles into there. I'd now like to show you one of the videos produced at the museum. Might just pause that one there. I'd like to move on to interview techniques. Here are some examples of using a single camera video shot. This was kind of a really great thing that we just got by absolute accident. So I was at the Mirakan Museum and Display Center in Japan, and was interviewing Dr. Marai for doing an introduction for the Australian science facility called Questacon. The interview was very formal and, of course, very scripted because it was part of a government opening. But at the end of the interview, I had the chance to ask the first Japanese astronaut what it's like to fly into space. So, as I mentioned earlier, you never know what absolute gems you're going to capture just by accident, just by being there. After a formal interview, letting the subject that you're talking to ask them a question that is kind of what really motivates them. And it was my great honour to actually be able to capture that and hear his impression about how fragile our planet is, and to kind of speak to the opening ceremony last night. We only have one planet. It's absolutely vital that we take care of it. We're starting to run a little short on time, so I'll skip this, but these were basically some other single camera interviews that I did with some of the participants here, particularly on an application called EduRoam, which many of you may have seen, which is available at the conference. Perhaps if I can just spend a few moments talking about EduRoam. EduRoam is a capability that we provide to all of our university students. It addresses something that is really critical. If you go and visit another university, typically you need to find someone to provide you the login credentials to access the Wi-Fi. Using EduRoam, though, you're able to authenticate to any EduRoam point anywhere in the world using your home institution credentials. So this provides the control of ensuring that only academic staff and students are able to use the EduRoam network. But it's been widely deployed in places like airports, in main streets in tourist areas, and we've deployed it at every APAN meeting for about 10 years or so. It's just very convenient to know that you have a secure Wi-Fi access, which is connected back to your home institution, that you're able to just use for free at any time. This certainly doesn't preclude the use of commercial telecom services, which is essential, but for students who may be less advantaged, who can't afford to buy that SIM card, it gives them access to the network at their home universities or at conferences like this. Unfortunately, we're running a little short of time. I was going to go through a setup of the equipment that we're using here. I'd particularly like to thank our colleagues from BD-REN, the Bangladesh Research and Education Network, for bringing the equipment that was supplied as part of the Asia Connect project. If people are interested, I'm happy to go on with a second ECulture session, or do a demonstration over Zoom at some time in the future. The other I'm going to do was a setup of the ATEM equipment that we're using here as providing multi-source. What I might do is just quickly switch back to the ATEM. As you saw before, the ATEM itself provides an editing interface. We've been successfully using ATEMs as part of the production capabilities of our online version of APAN. Jamie Gillespie down the back is the chair of our technical committee. He's been able to secure enough ATEMs that we're now able to have our student volunteers produce and multi-camera and audio setup directly from each of the venues. The plan with this equipment is that it's passed on to the next APAN host after the conclusion of the meeting, which gives us time to train student volunteers and our student fellows who are interested in video production to be able to be up the back of the room and mix and edit all the video. Unfortunately, I threw them a bit of a curveball by having a short amount of time to set up. But thank you very much to our student volunteers and in particular Jamie for facilitating the setup of our ATEM equipment. So I'd like to kind of conclude in about 5 minutes and speak about one of the other elements of the ECulture group, which is cyber performance. Cyber performance links together performers from multiple venues in one city, all the way up to running across the whole of the Asian region, or even around the world. One of the key issues with any performance is audio. As you heard, I made an error and left Zoom running on my computer, which was then reflecting back about 1/10 of a second later. It's a really horribly discordant experience to hear audio reflected multiple times. One of the other challenges is latency. We need to be aware that audio is a multi-phase capability. So we need to consider both the audio delay in an auditorium. In a room this size, the delay or reflection off the walls is very limited. But in a venue like the larger room, there is a finite amount of time at the speed of sound which audio will take to actually pass between the microphones, the microphones at the front of the venue, the speakers at the back of the venue. Interconnecting multiple sites across our research and education networks has another challenge of the networks are not static, fixed things. The latency can change dynamically based on traffic load. However, we have written a number of papers which describe some of our activities. One of them is called DQ12, Dancing Across Oceans, which was a collaboration between Salvador, Barcelona in Spain, Salvador in Brazil, Zheng in Korea, and Chiang Mai in Thailand. And we were able to successfully combine musicians and dancers playing across all of those venues simultaneously. If you'd like to access this paper, it's available for free on ResearchGate. And I'd like to thank my co-authors of the paper and contribution. In that paper, we explain a lot of the underlying practical physics of audio reflection, handling multivariant latency, and a technique that one of our former members of the ECulture working group came up with, which is to provide a synchronization beat from the furthest latent site so that all of the musicians can synchronize. We found that jazz musicians are the most adaptable and flexible in terms of being able to handle the delay. And the absolute worst case is trying to have string musicians who rely on being close to each other to actually have visual cues of when they need to start and stop their performances. So what I'd like to show you now is a very sped up version of the preparation that we did in Vietnam. So as you can see, we had multiple sites. We had a string quartet in Vietnam. And I'll just scrub this so you can watch. This was about 4 hours of the typical setup, rehearsal, in preparation for the final production that we streamed live on the internet. So in the background, you can see the other parties, the other musicians playing. Here, I'll just give you a brief view of so that event in itself took about 6 months of organisation, and we had about 2 days of rehearsal and rig up time, led by our dear friend Professor Gu from Korea. Unfortunately, we're just about out of time, but I was going to do a live demonstration of editing with iMovie. What I'll be doing is recording various segments of this presentation and making them available on my YouTube channel, so that you're able to follow along with less haste than I'm going here. So I'd like to kind of end this on how the APAN community has managed during the pandemic. Unfortunately, the meeting that was scheduled in Nepal, APAN49, had to be cancelled due to lockdown. Jamie has worked tirelessly now that we are now able to do APAN as both an in-person and a hybrid event. This greatly expands the range of people able to attend APAN events. Sometimes the cost is prohibitive for less developed countries to actually send people in person, but they're able to participate and enjoy the APAN community experience remotely using the Hoover application. This gives you kind of an example of the complexity of the wiring that we have in the room, which was unfortunately exacerbated by me doing a replication of the complexity of the wiring on the table and then having it feed into another more complex system. So one of the takeaways that I would suggest is don't do what I do and try to do a setup in 20 minutes. Give yourself a day or so, actually give yourself a bit of a time to test everything out, because it is a pretty complex thing to get right. And even professionals who do it all the time can make mistakes. So I'd like to apologize for some of the inferior quality video to start with, but these are the facts of live production. So with that, thank you very much. My contact details are shown on the screen. I'm hoping our next presenter is in Zoom. Unfortunately, he was supposed to join us in person, but is in isolation in India based on being infected with the latest variant of avian flu. So with that, I'd like to conclude, and I'll jump back into Zoom. Will be a moment or two, and I'll see if he's available and ready to present.
Hi, Andrew. Can you hear me? Hi, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. Hi, Andrew. I just got a message from Liana.
So our next presenter is Shrikant Ballarao. If you're online, Shrikant, could you unmute your video and audio and deliver your presentation, please?
Hi, Andrew. Can you
I'm
hear
not
me?
sure if he was actually well enough to join us in this event.
Andrew? Liana said that he can't attend.
Okay, in that case, we're 4 minutes up to afternoon tea. Thank you very much for sitting in and listening. Trying to write a presentation and deliver something this long is a bit of an unusual thing for me. My day job is in high performance computing, and video is just something I do as a side interest. But thank you very much for joining us. I hope I've given you some kind of basics of video production. We've just dipped our toes in the water though, but Thank you very much, and thank you for attending the APAN meeting.